Loud and Quiet presents Midnight Chats.
Through making our podcast every fortnight for the past 14 months or so, one of my favourite things about doing it has been the countless artists, albums, films, directors, places that it's turned me on to. When we record these, almost every time someone will mention something that afterwards I'll always go and check out. But I'd say my guest on this latest episode, Toddla T, takes that to another level. He's a music obsessive, as most of the people we have on here are, but the sheer breadth and depth of his knowledge is mind-boggling. Plus, the way he talks about it is really infectious. If Toddla T isn't a name you know all too well, his story started back in Yorkshire. He wasn't even a teenager before he learned to DJ and mix, and by his late teens, still living at home in Sheffield, working in a shoe shop, he got signed and moved down to London. And to date, he's put out 2 solo records. His debut, Skanky in 2009, and then Watch Me Dance a couple of years later. He's also made a new one after a sort of gap of 6 or so years. This will be his 3rd one, and it's called Foreign Light, and it comes out in July. And you might have heard the lead single, Beast, which features Steph London. But Toddla T definitely isn't just an album artist though. He lists a few in the podcast you're about to hear, but he's been a producer and a collaborator with the likes of Roots Maneuver, JME, Wiley, Jammer and Rasheen Murphy over the years, loads of others as well. And outside of that, he's a broadcaster, hosting his own regular shows on Radio 1 and 1Extra. He's also a DJ, which has pretty much taken him to every corner of the world over the last decade or so. Now, I always roll my eyes when I hear the word eclectic used in relation to music taste or knowledge, but Toddla T truly does have an eclectic taste. You'll discover that in this podcast, literally from the very beginnings of his love of US rap through to British hip-hop, reggae, dubstep, electronica, everything in between and outside of that. He's also encyclopedic on grime, having championed it from the very, very early days. And he talks about that and where he thinks that's all heading next, after obviously grime's had a couple of years very much in the kind of spotlight in the mainstream. And he also has had first-hand experience of visiting and recording in Jamaica, which means he really does know what he's talking about when it comes to dance island reggae music, and I thought that was really fascinating when he talks about that. For this Midnight Chats, he invited me to his studio in West London a couple of weeks ago to record the conversation you're about to hear. The place is about 100 metres from where he throws his annual sound system and his annual party at Notting Hill Carnival each August. And I must admit, I left thinking that I can't really be anywhere else this bank holiday weekend in August. He really did sell it to me. And just finally, if you do like what you hear, do subscribe to our podcast, Midnight Chats. It means you'll automatically get a new episode when we put them up each fortnight at midnight on a Thursday. And rate us, review us, all that kind of helpful stuff. But for now, I will leave you with this. It's Toddla T on episode 28 of Midnight Chats. Toddla T, thanks for joining us on Midnight Chats. Normally we record this podcast in our little office in East London, but we kind of made a trip out today, and just tell us a bit about where we are and what we can go and see around us.
We're right now in my studio in West London. I've been in this building for 7 years now, I think. Feels like 20 minutes, but that's what life's like at the minute. I used to share it with another producer called Red Light, and he used to have this room that we're sat in right now. And when we exit this room, there's a teeny little room to the right that's about the size of an average toilet. And I remember when we first moved in here, I was so proud to have a studio with a security door, proper lights and air conditioning, because my first studio in Sheffield, where I grew up and learned my craft, was a space in a warehouse called Kenilworth Works, and it was £30 a month. And
Amazing.
yeah, and it was so cold on a cold day that you could see your own breath, because it was just a room with cracks in the wall, and above us was a rehearsal studio, and when they played you couldn't really make music because it was so loud. And I remember coming to this particular unit and working next door with a producer called Seiji and being like, oh my God, imagine if one day I could have a studio like this. So when I managed to actually fortunately be able to afford a space like this, even the little room next door felt like such a luxury. So I worked in that little room for sort of 3 years. Then Hugh Red Light moved out and I took the whole space on. It's recording studio stroke boys room. All the stuff that my partner doesn't let me have in the house ends up here, hence why there's an inflatable parrot to my right. There are trainers that I really like that are just taking up room in the house on the wall. There's some memorabilia. There's a lot of stuff from Carnival.
I was going to say, I can see some Worcester sauce over there or something like that. Or
Yeah.
relish.
There's a company in Sheffield called Henderson's, and if you're from Sheffield or around it, pretty much every time you go to a pub, that is on the table with other condiments. It's a very home pride. We actually did a collab with them, so we did Toddla Tea Henderson's Relish a few years ago. So for me, that's a big moment. That's like, I don't know, a vodka fan doing like a collab with, a Grey Goose. Like for me, that was a deep moment. Anyway, so yeah, it's just, obviously there's music equipment, but obviously just I stash a lot of stuff here. There's a room there. I have my stage at Notting Hill Carnival is about 100 metres away. So a lot of the stuff makes it back here for stash and we bring it out at carnival time. So yeah, it's great. It's my own space. I make music here, but I can work from here. I can dump stuff here. I can have a laugh here. Had a session this weekend where we had a sort of mini party at the same time. It's a joy, man. I love it in here. It's I've thought about moving a few times, but it's just too convenient and too good. Yeah. I'd just be doing it for the sake. So yeah.
Right behind your head is a poster for Skanky, which is your debut album, and it says 25th of May 2009. That is pretty much bang on 8 years ago. So what do you remember from that time?
Jeez, that's mad. Well, these posters here, there's one right on the wall as you mentioned. These were the promo posters that were slapped all around Sheffield. And this record here, Skanky, my debut record, as you said, was a compilation and works of everything I've been doing, I guess, 3-4 years prior to it. And it was very much a Sheffield thing. I was born and raised there. I made the majority of the record in there with another producer called Ross Autumn, who is an amazing producer from Sheffield. He's very, very punk-spirited. So he was perfect in the time of my life to help me with that record because the sound of it was very raw, young, bit stupid. And I worked in his studio, and that time of my life is kind of mad because I went from working in a shop selling trainers and clothes for £4 an hour to slowly getting phone calls in the back of the stock room asking me to come to London and play and asking me to do remixes and all this stuff. And overnight it felt like it all had happened, and it was actually quite overwhelming because even though I'd been making music for so long before that, I'd been DJing since I was 10, so music was my life for most of my life. By the time it all got serious, it was just a bit mental. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I felt like I kind of had to be a man all of a sudden. I was living at home with my mum's. All of a sudden people were talking about a lot of money and, big meetings and all this stuff. So it was a mad time because it was so much joy with the music and so much paying off of what I've been trying to achieve. But at the same time, it felt like I just had to step up straight away. It was kind of weird. It was like I went to university for 3 years in like 20 minutes. So yeah, it was a joy, and that just set the foundation as to where I am now, luckily. So very, very important moment and record for me in my life, that one.
You just mentioned then that you started DJing when you were 10 years old. So what was the circumstance where you stood behind a pair of decks for the first time? And 10 years old. That's extraordinary, isn't it?
It even seems weird to say now, but it's funny because my older sister was always well into music anyway, and obviously growing up, an older brother or sister you look up to. So I think I always had that subconsciously in my mind that music was obviously something really cool or really aspirational. But I was just obsessed with hip hop when I got to about 9, because when you're growing up, particularly them times, they're slightly different now, I guess, with smartphones and stuff. You buy one or you get given one CD potentially a year. So it'd be like a Now 38 or something. You'd batter that and you know all the hit songs. And that was obviously my younger life. I got into random stuff like Meatloaf when I was about 7. Me and my dad went to see him at Sheffield Arena. And, you know, just stuff like that you just stumble across, and you'd have that one tape and you batter it. But then when I got old enough to kind of find my own stuff, I just got obsessed with rap. And it was Westwood on Radio 1. It was Yo MTV Raps that you used to show for 6 hours at night, twice a week on MTV. And local pirate station called SCR. And I just sort of dived right in. My cousin showed me Biggie's first album. I just got obsessed. I thought it just was, everything was brilliant. Lyrics, beats, artwork, the fact that they swore, it was all perfect. As I was watching MTV Raps so much, there was always a DJ. I was like, I can be him. I can't be that rapper. It don't make sense. I'm from Sheffield and I'm small and pale and skinny, but I can be the DJ. So I just got into that idea and started buying. Well, actually, my dad, bless him, bought me Malcolm McLaren, Free Buffalo Girls Go Round the Outside from a second-hand shop. And that was my first record, I think. Okay. Vinyl, anyway. Yeah. And then I just started going to town and collecting pocket money and buying records. And eventually got 2 belt drive turntables that were hi-fi ones, not pitched ones, and a mixer from Richer Sounds. And that was probably around 10, 11. The needles kept breaking and stuff, and the mixer was terrible. But it just made me, you know, get the idea of putting records together and buying vinyl when I could afford it. So my record collection started. And by the time I got to 14, 15, and I'd proper saved, I managed to get proper turntables as such, and could DJ and mix and start scratching and stuff. And that's the similar sort of time when I was invited to start playing out as well. So it's mad.
For so many people, when they're growing up and kind of discovering music for the first time, it doesn't often come via the kind of like immediate family. In fact, like, I specifically remember, it's still kind of like an ongoing joke in my family now, where if I go home and I put something on, my folks be like, what is this nonsense? What is this noise? Whereas it sounds like the opposite for you. Like, that early encouragement was the absolute springboard to basically doing what you're doing now, right?
Definitely. They're like, they probably didn't like it. You know, hearing
Biggie.
Hearing Biggie being shouted down the stairs, like some pretty brutal skits on that album as well. You know, but they tolerated it, and there's no doubt about it. It's like their support, or even their kind of, I don't even know if it was like conscious, but the fact that they allowed that to happen allowed me to be here. Definitely, I'm so blessed in that sense. And my dad's, and my mum, to be fair, are well into music, different stuff. So I think they probably got that passion. They understood it more than someone that didn't like music or didn't really go to gigs or whatever. So yeah, it's true. It's definitely true in that sense. My sister, I didn't really get the music she was into until later in my life. She loved house music in the 90s and early 90s, and I just didn't get that for years. But it was still always on, and you could hear the kick drums and rare air through the ceiling. So it was always about, you know, my house was quite musically driven, even if people didn't play instruments or DJ. So yeah, but my parents, 100% the support is definitely helped me be here. It's like crucial, really. Yeah. Blessed.
Talk to me a bit about the kind of journey from leaving Sheffield. So when things kind of like started to get going for you, like you're saying, you were getting the opportunities to kind of like play bigger DJ gigs, and like, you know, people were kind of interested in having big meetings. Where did the transition to coming down to London happen, and what was that like? You know, growing up in Sheffield, being surrounded by what is like an amazing music city, but then London's a whole much bigger level, isn't it? So what was that like when you first arrived?
Boy, I used to come to London anyway before, just to buy records. I remember coming down with a school friend and buying vinyl from everywhere, from the HMV to Tower to Mr. Bongos and stuff. So it wasn't like the first time. Before that, I'd come down with my mum to like the Science Museum and stuff. But coming down as I got older and meeting music people and going to raves, it was just amazing, because Sheffield, like you say, has got an incredible music scene, history, and a hub, but it's still quite small on the grand scheme of things. Whereas when I come to London, there were so many people doing what I did. The fashion element of London I really loved. People were wearing stuff that I really liked and admired, and it was all different types of people. So it was like, as a young man, it was super exciting. And I used to come down, and there's a guy called Raf Rundell who worked for 1965 at the time, and I sent him a demo, you see, and he put all my early records out. And again, it's integral to why I'm sat here today. And I used to go and meet him and stay on his sofa in Forest Hill for probably 3 years. And he was very much at the epicenter of what was going on, and he had a office in Soho with James Endicott. And Soho at the time, that's where all the labels were. So I'd get off the train and I'd get the tube and probably get lost and try and find him and go Soho. And there's all these clothing trainer shops. Everyone was wearing all the new stuff. And then I'd go meet him and we'd end up in the pub with some like music producer or something. And it was just like, it kind of weirdly felt like I was home with like a massive group of like people that were so similar to me in terms of the passion for the music and the art. And yeah, by the time I actually moved here, I was going home to get a pair of socks. Like, that's one of the reasons I actually settled here, because it was getting ridiculous how little I was at home. Yeah. It wasn't like a big conscious decision, like, I'm going to move to London and make it in the music biz. It was like, if I don't move here now, I'm going to probably waste so much money on train fee, and it's just inconvenient for everyone. Yeah. So it was like a slow process to actually being based here. Yeah.
And once you got into your studio, you mentioned at the top that you've been in here for like 6-7 years now.
Yeah, I think even maybe longer, but yeah.
Yeah. What have been some of your favourite days, favourite nights, favourite kind of sessions in this room in particular?
There's been so many good times. I mean, I'm biased. I love this space, but people always say it's got a spirit to it, and people always deliver in here, which is bizarre because in studios sometimes people just can't catch a vibe, or whatever. I don't think I've ever had a bum session in this room, which is bizarre because everyone has an off day. But obviously, I'll be sat here some days and it's not happening. But with artists and collaborations, I literally haven't had a dead session in here, which is kind of bizarre. I think people like the fact it don't feel like a studio. Like, it is a studio, look, but it's more like just a bit of a messy room with some speakers and loads of stuff in it. And I think that helps to the vibe. But there's been loads, man. I mean, I've done sessions in here with Jamie, Skepta, Miss Dynamite, Jamaican artists like Protege, Sons of Dub, Coco's an artist from Sheffield. Me and him developed his whole sound in here. I've had a lot of after parties in here. One this weekend, that's why it smells a bit fragrant. I mean, boy, and the room next door is my old room is now the vocal booth, so that's where everyone voices now. And again, before that, a similar thing. There's been so many, man. It's like, it's funny because I used to start work about 2 or 3 and go till midnight, and now I start at 9 in the morning and finish at 7 because I've got 2 kids. And I encourage artists to come down really early. Which
they see some sleepy eyes, right?
Yeah, which they don't. Well, not all of them, but some artists, particularly young ones, I don't want to be in here at 9 in the morning. I didn't when I was 22. So yeah, I'm down here like from early, and people always deliver, and it's been a joy. And there's too many moments, really. There's nothing like bonkers that's ever happened. No one's ever set anything on fire or fell asleep mid-take, but it's just been a very consistent and joyful musical moments in this room that just seem to flow supernatural. And I think it's something of this weird spirit in this room, and people kind of say it as well. I actually lend this room out to friends sometimes as well, and they always say the same. It's like, something about your studio, man. Something about your studio. So I tell you, actually, recently I actually did some additional production on this record called Crank It, which is by George Kowali and Kideko. It's a massive kind of pop dance record. It was big in the club for ages, and Ministry of Sound came to me to help make it into more of a radio record. So we took the beat and we vocaled Nadia Rose and Sweetie Irie in here, and then they went and we arranged it and mixed it, and they went, and then I was like, oh, cool. And then it went to radio and it started to do really well, and it was funny because I kept getting a taxi home and hearing it on the way home, and in like Capital Extra or Kiss, like really mainstream stations. And it's funny because when you come out the room here onto the high street, or the road, sorry, it's empty, it's dead. And when you get in the cab and hear that record, it's just weird because I just don't think you'd expect it to come out of this room or this building. So that's the latest thing that's been quite funny to sort of see when I'm getting like a taxi home from here, hearing a record on one of the most mainstream stations in the most out of context place. So.
You must still get a bit of a buzz out of little things like that. Well, not
100%.
even little things; they're kind of quite significant in a way, aren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah, no, I do. Yeah, totally. It's funny, and knowing that it's coming out of this room and my microphone and through this, messy room.
You mentioned Jamie and Skepta there. Like, I mean, when did you've championed, you supported the development of UK grime for a long time. The fact that kind of now is arguably having its kind of mainstream moment.
Yeah.
When did you first fall in love with UK grime? Is that a sound that you've always loved? And what do you think of kind of where it's at right now? Like where we've got to the point where Boy Better Know can play the O2 Arena, put on their own festival there, and Skepta can headline festivals and things like that. So talk to me a bit about your love for UK grime and your feelings on where you see it now.
Well, obviously being obsessed with hip hop and rap as a kid, was always buying a lot of American rap. Majority British hip hop was around. I would see that. I'd see the odd video on MTV Raps. Roots Maneuver was always a stick out artist. I think he was one of the only ones that had videos on telly at the time. So in for that, you discover deeper buying records. There was a British rap scene, Black Twang, Task Force, Jest, etc. But was buying those records stuff, and a lot of that stuff was really well crafted. But it was so influenced by America. It was like we were doing what they were doing really well. And that's no disrespect to any of them artists because they're really good at it. But what happened when grime came around was it was just so undeniably us. And it was the first time I heard it. A lot of my mates were into garage growing up, and I didn't really like it that much because I was such a hip-hop nerd. I thought the MCs were rubbish because they weren't saying anything. It was for the rave, and I was too young to be in a rave, so I just didn't get it. They were champagne, girls, where. I was like, I just didn't get it. And then when it got darker, and a lot of my friends would buy Sidewinder tape packs, and Sidewinder was a rave in Milton Keynes that was garage and then got into dark grime, and dark grime became grime. And the darker garage sound that turned into grime actually became more popular than garage. So it became the main thing at these events. And anyway, they would play these tapes in the car when I was with them. And then I proper got it. Like I was like, oh my gosh! Like there's some famous sessions. There's a real famous one with Dizzy and Wiley on with a DJ Slimzy, and the way that what they're talking about is so British and honest, and the beats were so much darker and heavier and mental than UK garage was. And when I heard "I Love You," it just slapped me around the face. Like, it was just. I still remember hearing it. Like it was just like I properly got that vibe then, and so that's when I sort of started discovering grime and getting deeper into it. And it was such a London thing, though. In Sheffield, we didn't have DJs or MCs, you know what I mean? And it was funny because I was obsessed with British rap. Sorry, I was into British rap. I was obsessed with American rap. And by this time, I was also getting quite into dancehall and reggae as well because I was old enough to start going to little parties and hearing it loud. And it made more sense on a sound system and in a party environment. Yeah, so I used to look at America and Jamaica, and now I was looking at London as on the same pedestal as, you know, like Wiley and Diz were to me as impressive and as exotic and as exciting and famous as Jay-Z or Vybz Kartel. Like, we became so obsessed with this scene down in London as it developed, and they started going from the sets from raves and on pirate radio and making records. A lot of the time it would be the Sidewinder tapes. The Lord of the Mic DVDs was DVDs that were clash, so it was like battles of grime MCs. That's the first time I got to see them. And there was one called Lord of the Decks, which was the same as well. And then there was Practice Hours, etc. All these different DVDs that document them. And they come up the M1, and to people like me, I would obsess over them. And then One Extra sort of launched not too far after. and they pushed it. It was Richie Vibe V, Cameo, all these guys playing it. And I just got obsessed. I was buying the vinyl. I was watching all the DVDs. And then when I came to London, a few times I got to see some of these artists. And like I say, I was impressed. I'd be starstruck by these people as much as I would if I'd have bumped into Biggie, you know? And it was truly British and it was truly ours. And it still is. And it just sums up a time in Britain that was very special musically. I think my generation, I'm 32 now, so I'm older than a lot of people in what I do now, but in my generation, I've never stumbled across a scene as exciting as that time. I wasn't around really when Jungle was kicked off. I remember going to Youth Club and hearing it. I wasn't, Acid House was long before me. The British rap thing was cool, but it wasn't as cultural as grime. When grime came along, I've never seen anything like it culturally. Dubstep was born out of grime, so again, it was kind of lending from that. But grime was just so pure, and I just loved it. And it kind of had a real buzz at the start. And Dizzy Won a Mercury and Rare, and then it kind of died down, and a lot of people kind of stopped doing it. But I was still well into it. I was still playing it on the radio and that. And then again, like we say, in the last 3 or 4 years, it's kind of come back round. And I think it's partly because a few accidents happened and it reignited the flame and made people believe they could do that and be accepted again. And JME and Skepsis, That's Not Me. For me, that record kind of reignited the flame because it was the original grime sound from two pioneers that everybody rates, doing hardcore, authentic grime. And on top of that, I think it charted top 20, and look what Skeppy's done now. I think that just reignited the flame, and I just think it's great because it's just it's almost like the more hardcore you are, the further you go. Whereas there was a time when people started making pop records and watering down their sound and bleaching it out because they felt like that's what they needed to do to survive in the music industry. And it kind of opposite of that recently. It's kind of like the more pure and honest you are, the further you go, and that's really inspiring and aspirational for young ones. I mean, look what Stormzy's done as well. It's unbelievable, and he really, really is just himself on really quite uncompromising production. I mean, it's mad. Who'd have thought that this O2 thing you mentioned would even ever happen? Like, it's incredible. I mean, I think they're doing like a full day of experiences as well, aren't they?
Yeah, it's going to be like a full event with kind of other things going on outside of what's happening on stage.
Yeah, it'll be like, I don't know, have they announced any of it yet? Is it like cooking or, I don't know, like food, probably workshops, fashion, culture stuff, Well,
JME, even just this week, JME recorded that video with Jeremy Corbyn, kind of urging young people, the reason why they should register, get involved with the upcoming general election. So it's encouraging. It's got to be a positive thing that people like JME are making that step, putting themselves out there, willing to be the kind of like face of urging young people to, to get involved in discussion and politics and everything else. Yeah,
he's I've always loved JME. He's a proper hero of mine because he's so uncompromising and honest, and he's so brilliant at what he does musically, but out of that, he genuinely just seems to be so comfortable in his own skin, and it's just so, I think we all want that in life, but he does things that he wants to do that are unconventionally not cool. So like the veganism thing, when he decided to turn vegan, it was the most out of fashion thing ever. Like, what? Everyone was talking about chicken shops and meat, and it was like kind of soft traditionally, and like look at where veganism is now. Like, it's the most in thing ever. Even like he's obsessing with technology. He's always a step forward from even like techies. He's into like rollerblading and gaming and all this stuff that he's like on paper isn't cool, but because he just wants to do it and he's into it, he does it. And I just think that's just amazing because not many people dare, put themselves out like that. On top of that, he's so talented on the mic, and what he says is just so real. And I think that's why everyone loves Jeremy, from people like me to young kids to like probably people older than me. And I think it's brilliant how he's embraced politics this year, and regardless of who you're looking to vote for or what you believe in, him just basically, putting it out there that you need to vote as a young person, and also explaining to Corbyn why he hasn't. This is a conversation I've never seen before, really. And it's, I think that's the way you reach youths. Some guy on telly has no, no connection to a young person in London ain't going to be able to achieve that. Someone like Jamie will, and the fact he's done that makes me love him even more, which I didn't know was possible. Because I just think he's the best human being in the whole globe. This is great. Yeah.
What's next then? What's next? Like we just discussed, like JME, Skepta, Stormzy, all these people are on such a high level now. Where do you see the next movement for the sort of underground grime? Will that give like the whole thing like a shot in the arm? Does that mean that it's going to be around for another 10, 15 years because of what these people are achieving? What do you think will happen next?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, with grime? Because you see like people like Stormzy and Novelist, they're super young, man. I don't know how old Stormzy, about 22 or something.
Something like yeah, I think he's 22.
Yeah, it's mental, innit? Because I'm 32 and he makes me feel like a child. Because he's so like switched on and so smart and so confident, and even physically, like he looks like just really healthy and amazing, and he's just incredible in his Stormzy. But I think they probably, because they're like, yeah, all right. So when like I Love You or something come out, he was probably about, that's probably about, how old's that record? 15 years maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, he's barely 5 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So these guys grew up listening to grime, like, and people in the States grew up listening to hip hop. Like people's parents will be playing that now, like. So there's going to be a generation that is just born into this thing now, which means that it's just so natural now. It's like I think that can only influence the next generation, even if it's not in a sense of it being grime as we know it now. I think ultimately the younger generations and the new generations will be inspired by it and potentially create their own version of it. Like we don't want to make or play what our parents want to, but it influences us. So I don't know if it will stay at, is how it is now for the next 10, 15 years, but I'm sure, and I'm pretty sure it's integral to our musical scene and culture now, that it will ring through the next couple of generations, like, reggae does in Jamaica, or salsa would do in, certain places, whatever, In Jamaica, for example, the young Rasta movement references their elders, but it's got hip-hop influence in there. It's got, what they talk about isn't the same. They dress different. So maybe it'd be a case of something like that. But it's cool because, like, now in London as well, there's scenes that are referencing it already. Like this whole thing they call it Afro Swing, which is like Kojo Funds, J Hus, artists like that. They young kids in London of African descent. A lot of them, not all of them, making this music at a slower tempo, but it's referencing grime and reggae and rap. And it's a melting pot. It sounds really exciting. And I don't think that could probably have happened without grime, for example. So you're going to get, these things spawning out of it as well. And it's already beginning with this whole new movement now, with this Afro swing, they're calling it, which is a really exciting little time.
I wanted to ask about your travels, because anybody that's ever listened to any of the albums that you've made, the records you've made, helped produce, your radio shows that you've done over the years, know that you've got kind of wide scope. You're a massive fan of reggae, you love grime, if they tune in, they'll hear dubstep, they'll hear all these different things. So you seem to me like somebody who's always kind of got their ears open, but you must have kind of like gone on some trips to go and like really kind of like open your mind and discover some music. Tell us about some of the places you've been. In particular, you mentioned Jamaica there. Yeah. Like, what have your travels been like, and what kind of things have you had your eyes open to?
I mean, through DJing, I've been lucky enough to go not everywhere, but America loads, Australia, Japan, Europe, Iceland, all these places. Before I started DJing, I'd never even been to Scotland. I've been lucky enough to travel on holiday to Europe, and I've been to America and stuff, but I'd never really like travelled on my own accord. So like it'd be like on holiday or school trips. Yeah, and I remember going Dundee early days, like being like, "Whoa, Scotland!" But yeah, I've been all over the gap. Jamaica is very important to me musically and thus far culturally. But when I was growing up, like I say, I was obsessed with rap music and hip hop music. When I started going out, I'd hear a lot of dancehall and reggae in the parties, and there's a couple of DJs back home, Winston Hazel and DJ Pipes, who would always drop to reggae and dancehall at some point in the night on these big sound systems, and it was just sounded amazing. It was as simple as that. And I started buying dancehall and reggae records, and then I noticed how much it was in our music. Jungle, obviously, the early grime bits, still grime, but yeah, the mad electronic music we make. I could hear it in so much of what we do here, and it was important for me to, I guess, get more into the source of it. So I would be buying records. There's a shop in Sheffield called Fox's News, off the High Street, London Road, it's called, and it sold DVDs, a lot of banger music, and underneath the counter you'd have imports from Jamaica, and you'd go in there, and it was cool because the 45s, the 7-inches were £2.50, but a hip-hop 12 from the States was £7, so I could buy 3 for 1, and so it was kind of cool because it's like going to get it's like buying a 10p mix over like a chocolate bar because you get loads more, and so it was sick. And I was just going in on that, and then I met a guy called Cerisi, who is an artist that I work with a lot via a mutual friend, and he really schooled me up on dancehall and the culture and lent me a lot of VHS tapes of old stage shows from Jamaica called Sting, which are they're like the Glastonbury of Jamaica, and he schooled me up massively on it all, and I just got well into it. This was when I was like 16, and just found it really exciting because I felt like I'd studied hip hop so much through my teens, I was ready for a new thing to kind of geek out into, and dancehall really reminded me of rap anyway, but it was like obviously done so differently, and I just I still to this day, love and play it and keep on top of it, and I quite like the pantomime of it as well. There's so much like beef and on records, and so much scandal and rare, and it feels like it's fun at times. And that sounds quite menacing, but it's a lot of the time it's quite fun. So yeah, when I was about, I can't remember, about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, one of my very good friends was going to Jamaica on holiday with his girlfriend in an all-inclusive, flossy posh place in the Grill, which is like the tourist area traditionally of Jamaica. And then he split up with her. And I was like, raw, I've got to go with you,
I'm your plus one.
Yeah. So I bought...
Stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, man, I'm going to be your girlfriend this week. Nah, joke runs. And it's so I bought the ticket and we went, but I said, I can't go to Jamaica and not do music because it's just be bonkers to not do that. And this was around the time I was making my second record, which is called Watch Me Dance. So I went, I bought a ticket, and we decided to go to the Grill and then go to Kingston and do some music. So via a few mutual link-ups, we got someone out there to help us. But obviously Jamaican music and thus for culture is integrated into British society a lot of the time. For example, like you hear it in all the records, there's sound systems I used to play in Sheffield were always operated by a West Indian community. We'd go to certain raves that were I was predominantly West Indian music, and just for party goers. My next door neighbours are Jamaican. I could hear the music over the wall. There's a Jamaican food shop around the corner. We all got the slang, etc., etc. So you feel like you know it a bit. But when I went to Jamaica for the first time, when I stepped off that flight and that culture just slapped me around the face, boy, I thought I knew it and I just didn't, because
was it just that much more intense, raw?
Yeah, both, everything. It's just more. It's more raw. That's the way of putting it. But I went there on such a musical pilgrimage. I didn't think of basic stuff like the heat, or mosquitoes, or the fact that it's beautiful, and all these things just hit me. I was like, flipping heck, this is mad. And we went to this hotel for a few days, and even that felt a bit like out there. And then we got hooked up by this woman called Andrea, who would take care of us once we got to Kingston and drive us to studios and whatnot. And she hooked up a trip from the hotel to Mobay Airport, and then we went to Kingston. And Kingston was just a next level culture. Got off, drove through the city, past the prison, downtown, which is a kind of poor area, Kingston, round the back to the studio called Builders, and voiced and recorded for 2 days. And I got that, and I was nervous about if people would accept my music or understand it or like it or whatever. And I got in the studio, and there was the engineer who was called Daya, and I put the first beat on, and I was super nervous. And there was a girl there called Double K, who was like a DJ MC, and she heard it and went in the booth and gave me a song, and it was like, that's what I've been trying to get for so long. Like, that is it. Wow. And it was like 2 days of complete joy. Everyone was amazing. Everyone was well into the music. And that was like, I think I've been somewhat mental like 14 times since, because I've been recording. I've been there with One Extra a lot, doing radio. I played there. I'm going again on Saturday to play. And I've got a lot of really good friends out there now. I've had some moments I'll never forget. I've met so many heroes. I've worked with so many heroes. And it's kind of like a second home. And this week when we go again, I'll get off and I'm meeting loads of friends, and we're going to hang out, and I'm playing on a beach, and I'm going to go to a studio, and it's just a joy.
Yeah, that sounds awful, doesn't it? About 100 metres from here, you mentioned it earlier, about 100 metres from here is where you set up for Carnival each bank holiday weekend. You've always been a massive supporter, always been involved with Notting Hill Carnival, which happens on the bank holiday weekend. If anybody is listening that has never been before, just tell us what is so special and why you basically wouldn't be anywhere else in the world that weekend.
I literally couldn't be anywhere else in the week, anywhere else. My favourite party in the world. Okay, so I've been coming down to Carnival since, I think, 2006. I used to get the train from Sheffield, and the first time I ever come, I got the train down, and I got off at Westbourne Park, and I think it was Westbourne Park, and then I walked down, and I came under the Westway, and I have never seen so many people rammed into a street in my life. And I had my record box as I was playing, and I was just dragging it up the road, and it was funny because I just like didn't really get how big it was. And I'd heard about Carnival because people from back home used to come down every year. I didn't get it, but what I loved about it from the day I got there was not only the fact that everyone's partying together, which is rare, is you don't hear a single rubbish record all day. And you know how many music you hear. I mean, that was the first time I came, and that blew my mind off. I mean, for me, Carnival sums up everything brilliant about Britain. It is rooted in West Indian culture. It's initially actually started by a woman, and she called it the Notting Hill Festival. And she had a dream one day that she saw kids in the street dancing together from all different walks of life. She decided to set it up, and that's what happened. And then one time, the Trinity community got their steel pans out, started doing parades, and it developed. And then sound systems were introduced later. And it was the sound system element that always attracted me, because I'm such a music guy. When I was coming to Carnival, there's sound systems in the street playing all different types of music. So we've obviously got a lot of soca, calypso, dub music, a lot of West Indian music, but then you've got a lot of the children of that: jungle, grime, hip-hop, soul, all these different sounds coming all around. And thus far you've got old people, young people, black people, white people, Asian people, gay people, straight people. It's the only place in the world that my dad has stood next to like a Brazilian woman dancing next to a young black kid, next to me, next to my auntie. You know what I mean? Like, it genuinely does bring people together, whereas clubs and festivals have a price bracket. They have certain rules in terms of dress. There's a lot of restrictions. But what happens with Notting Hill is everyone comes together and raves in the street to brilliant music, and it's completely unique to London. And I think it's so important to this city to have that once a year, to remind us that we all live together, and we all come from different places, but we all live in London. We all get on the same crap tube every day. We all, you know what I mean? And we come together on that day, and I've never seen it like that anywhere else any other time. And just from like a self-indulged point of view, it's just a right good party.
Midnight Chats is a loud and quiet podcast. Production by Emma Snook. Music courtesy of Gold Panda. Search Midnight Chats on iTunes for more episodes and to subscribe. For more information, visit loudandquiet.com.